only 20% of them were fresh, less than 7 day old leads. And then the other 80% of the dials were just older leads that the agent had purchased.
If you want lots of ROI, you got to give up some guarantee, potential IRA. You got to take the chance that you can lose, right? But if you want guaranteed, you got to give up some potential.
Moving into the third year, start of this year. I mean, I'm right now, the current stage of my business is I'm having to strategically crawl out of a very nasty hole that I created for myself in January of this year. Everything was smooth sailing. We were doing fine. Agents were doing about, in revenue, $70,000 to $80,000 a year. I'm sorry, in net income, $70,000 to $80,000 a year. After lead spend, maybe rev was close to like 110, 120 a year. But at the time, I really didn't understand the importance of persistency. Even after this conversation, I'm now kind of also understanding the importance of maintaining a better relationship with the client and trying to extract referrals too. We have done modest at best in the referral space. But in February, we thought it was as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Hey, everyone's doing well. If we just increase lead acquisition per agent, we can be doing double the well. So, we all rallied behind my idea, and this is why I take responsibility for it. I was like, if we just double your guys' lead spend, and we acquire 2 times more of the leads, then that's going to lead to 2 times more of the sales. Now, there was also a lot of technical pieces that went into it. Basically, what I did was I aggregated all of the data from Salesforce and the dialer, and what I saw was, out of the, let's call it, out of every 100 dials, so to speak, only 20% of them were fresh, less than 7 day old leads. And then the other 80% of the dials were just older leads that the agent had purchased. And then I started to pull data on, like, okay, well, what's the time per call? How long is each agent spending on the dialer versus how much they're spending actually on the phone? And going from agent to agent, I started to see visually through the data that the agents that did have more leads were purchasing slightly more leads than others, were spending more time. They had higher talk time, so more time actually having conversations. So essentially, I saw this gap in how much time agents were spending just dialing leads, older leads from people who weren't picking up. And that's where that push came from. I was like, well, what if we can replace that time with actual conversations, right? If we can replace that time with actual conversations, then essentially the agents the brokers would get more closes. So we did that in February. We first week was great. Second week was great. Third week also great. And then by then we were like, okay, can we do this again? So we had doubled lead acquisition for every single broker that could afford it at the time, all of the vets. And then we doubled down yet again. And they started to make more money, and everything was going good. And we said, okay, let's do it again. And then we doubled lead spend, we doubled acquisition. And then we had 4 consecutive months of just record-breaking months. We went from $85,000 in issued business December to $135,000 January, to $350,000 in February, to $500,000 in March, and everything seemed great. And then you get that 2 things happen. One, you get that comfortability curve you were talking about earlier, where You have a broker who starts to see this money, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh man, that was fun, but it took a lot, right? Like they're working 12 hours a day, they're dialing all day long, and for those that don't know what it's like to do appointments in repetition all day long, it is mentally draining. It is very exhausting. Like these brokers have to navigate a lot of complexities when they're really trying to make a sale. Um, and it does fatigue you mentally for sure. Like at the end of the day, you feel you're drained, you're exhausted. I've been there. I was a sales rep. I've been in sales for 10 years. So I know what it's like to take back to back to back to back appointments. So then that comfortability curve set in, and a lot of brokers kind of took their foot off of the gas. And when that happened, it revealed a problem that always existed, but we inflated the severity of that problem, and it was our persistency and retention rate. And when this comfort curve set in, during the time that we were scaling lead acquisition and agents were spending a lot of time acquiring new clients, the time that was spent managing their previous clients reduced dramatically. And we started to get some NSFs to come back, some insufficient funds draft. We started to get cancellations to come in. And because it was just this fury of everyone's closing business left and right, all of us unfortunately made the mistake of not caring so much about the cancellations and the chargebacks and the NSFs, because new money was consistently coming in. And obviously in this model, we get paid an advance commission, which is, technically debt from the carrier until it fulfills its course. So we ballooned a massive amount of debt because a lot of these policies charge back. So then in May, you had this. In April and May, we had this sharp decline in production because the agents sort of took their foot off of the gas after 2.5, 3 months of just like really pushing the pedal to the metal. And then now you have less production come in, plus a very sudden sharp increase in this chargeback rate. And because they had produced so much business the previous months, this chargeback rate just ballooned out of control. And this was partly because of our demographic as well. We were bringing in a lot of like middle to lower income individuals, and eventually that ended up, I heard Layla say the quality of your customers determines the quality of your business. I heard that just a few months ago, but looking back, I'm like, man, yeah, that's 100% the case. And so we ballooned a lot of this debt, and we had to make some really aggressive pivots to trying to move up market, and a lot of this debt ended up getting rolled up, and now I have an exuberant amount of money that I owe the insurance carriers from other agents' debt. So now we put a lot more attention on persistency, a lot more attention on getting higher ticket clients, who ultimately the product serves far better than your average Joe, regardless. And that's sort of been like the struggle that we've been dealing with since for the last 7 months, since May.
Other agents' debt. So, are you trying to make sure those agents who got those chargebacks are paying their part of their compensation back? Or are you taking on all of it?
No, so it automatically got rolled to me.
Well, yeah, it does. Absolutely. You take you're absolutely, it gets rolled to you. But those agents got paid that money. You didn't get paid that money. Do those agents have an expectation that you just take the hits even though they got paid, or are they paying their part of a chargeback?
No, so a lot of them ended up leaving the business because they weren't making money. The chargebacks were coming in. The business that they were writing wasn't covering the chargebacks, and then eventually it rolled up to me. And I've made efforts to recoup to recoup the money. However,
You're trying at least. They don't
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
expectation automatically that you just take the chargebacks or something. So yeah, that's really tough. If guys who quit yeah, I have some of that, but I don't believe it's actually even close to what you're dealing with right now. Folks who take off, disappear, and I don't have anything good to say about those folks. They created a
Yeah.
debt and a debt, and they're just making someone else pay for their debt. So sorry,
Yeah,
man.
so no, no worries. It's been a very big lesson to say the least, and obviously I wasn't. They 100% got paid that money, and now I am responsible to the carriers, at least to I'm obligated to pay that debt back. Um, but at the same time, I scaled us into a broken system, and that was the part of this entire mess that was my accountability and responsibility, and it was a hard lesson to learn. So um, I'm hoping that the direction we're moving in now um, will eventually, work this problem away. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much where we're at now, and we've had a little bit of success moving up market in the last few months. Um, but it's been just so much testing, especially in the direct response marketing space. It's expensive to advertise, and it's expensive to test, and moving up market has been expensive, and it's been a lot of just testing, and redoing our sales process and retraining the agents and resetting expectations. So there's been a lot of change with the brokerage over the last few months.
So you probably know this already. You're in one of the most contentious parts when it comes to persistency and product design of the life insurance market. Yeah, you're right smack dab in the middle of the most contentious, highest probability of policy cancellation of just about anything I can think of. So the experience the client has and their expectations, and forgive me if I go over some things, some thoughts that are obvious to you or you already figured out. I have some strong opinions about max funded life from my own experience and with clients. I won't share all of them here. That's a very wonky discussion, extremely wonky discussion. But as far as persistency, what is the name of, there is, I'll look for it later. I heard a gentleman describe it once before, that when you buy an IUL, a properly designed IUL with the right intentions, part of those right intentions is that it's a marriage. Okay? You do not buy a max funded IUL, especially if it's part of your retirement planning system, without treating it kind of like a marriage. I like that language a lot because it gives the person who's buying that policy a proper expectation that this is a long-term thing. It's a lot like a pension, right? Companies don't say, "Oh, you've worked for us for 2 years. Here's your pension." No,
Right.
they usually start at a minimum 10 years before you're even allowed to get a portion of what could become your pension, right? And typically they want you there about 25 years on average to get, say, a full pension. Some may be longer than that. And of course, we're seeing for a long time, pensions have been going away. The reason for that is pensions are expensive. Pensions are guarantees, and guarantees are expensive, right? So if you want lots of ROI, you got to give up some guarantee, potential IRA. You got to take the chance that you can lose, right? But if you want guarantees, you got to give up some potential ROI. You know that conversation, right? If you're in the IUL space, you totally know it. But giving clients that, and starting from the very beginning and positioning yourself. I think that's one thing our agency does is most of our marketing, 70-80% of it is Medicare based. But after 40 minutes of sitting down with a client and meeting them for the first time, I know more than their kids do about them. Okay. Well, as far as this kind of stuff we're talking about, I know their health. I know what prescriptions they're on. I know what's in their bank account. I know what's in their 401k. I know how much Social Security they're getting or planning on getting. I know how they want to get taken care of when they're really old, their preferences. Not to mention what kind of life insurance, why they bought it, how much they're paying for it, how long they've had it, all this stuff, right? Even though I went there to talk about Medicare, we introduce ourselves, we cover these 4 areas, and we change the whole paradigm. And then we teach agents, body language and how to communicate who they are and what they are, right? More than I'm a health insurance agent, I'm a Medicare agent. No, they're a comprehensive retirement planner. And we're going to talk about Medicare as our priority here, but there's a lot of other things. If we discover some of this stuff, I'm going to come back and we're going to open up that conversation more, right? So I think that positioning is really important for you guys. So I genuinely appreciate the salesman space. Okay. The talents, the grit, the skills, and the training that can go into that. But you're in a space that is contentious, and it has a lot of, honestly, this space right now, more than ever, the IUL space has more misrepresentation than ever. IULs were hot in the early 20-somethings, okay? And then they kind of went down a little bit, and now they're really hot right now, okay? And there's some FMOs that have gotten in the space that I know, and I'll take anyone to the mat over this. I know they're doing a really horrible job at what they're doing. And I believe that within 10 years, we're going to see a spike in lawsuits over this exact product, similar to variable annuities, subprime mortgages. So it's a tough space. The average person who buys a max funded IUL has certain ideas because of the illustrations they've seen that within about 2 to 4 years, they see that and they're like, I've made no money. This thing's just eating everything, right? Now, within about 8 years, they should see growth. But that's a long time for a person to wait, no matter what your conversation was. So they have to have an idea in their mind, not that they talk to a salesman about a product they like or has a cool idea, and they should not. I don't think they should be sold on the gains. Okay? They should be sold on talking to a professional who then asks them a lot of questions about their current financial picture, how they're saving, what vehicles they're saving in, actually lets the person know that an IUL is not the only thing you should be saving in. In fact, it's a bad plan if that's all you got, right?
Yeah.
I tell people if you're not maxing out a Roth, don't even touch IULs. If you got young kids in the house and a spouse to take care of, you better have a bunch of term insurance before you touch an IUL. Yeah, maybe you could combine if you like the idea, but you still need that coverage, right?
Yeah.
So if they have that conversation, the agent's positioning themselves as an advisor. Now they can't call themselves an advisor, right? That's illegal. I know a lot of insurance agents do that, but they can't say financial advisor. I know some say insurance advisor. That's not illegal or anything, but whatever. They position themselves as acting like one, though. They're trying to do the right thing for the client. So if it's sold from greed, I think you end up with, the old thing, everyone buys from greed or fear. Those are the two motivations, right?
Right.
And a lot of people are selling IUL from a position of greed. Now, I've been in very much the insurance space, and so that is my bias. I even tell clients that. I'll sit at a table, I say, I want you to know that if you're trying to beat the market and go to the moon, I'm probably not your guy. Not a
Yeah,
possible.
right.
Now, I have a money
Absolutely.
manager who actually, I won't even share his returns because they're very, very good. But that's over a good set of years.
Yeah.
But our bias, I'll tell a client, I'll say, um, I have a bias for safety and guaranteed or reliable outcomes. Okay. So I'm not the guy who spends a lot of time trying to figure out how to beat the market or make you a lot of money. Not that you can't grow, but I focus on reliable outcomes. And what I'll say is more than 9 out of 10 clients of the clients that we're seeing, they will literally say, "That's me." That's exactly what they all say. They say, "That's me," and then they emotionally and physically move closer to me. Um, and if they don't, then that's fine. They're the person who likes managing and active. They're 65 years old and they're still day trading. That's cool. That's cool. Okay. But that honesty about what I'm not and what I am and my bias, it sets the stage. So now we're talking about safety and reliable outcomes. And then if I talk IUL, if I think that's space one, I've said you should be doing X and Y before you should even touch an IUL. Okay. So that has two things. One, it's the right thing to do from an advisor counselor perspective. But two, it's a good sales thing to do because in sales, if you can take something away and make it more desirable because it's harder to get. So it does both those things. And then I'll go into say, look, this isn't for everybody because it is a long-term commitment. All right. It's like a pension. You've got to commit to this. It's not going to make you a ton of money in the early years. It's not going to look like the stock market. I know these projections are possible, but I don't know if they're probable. I'm also very conservative on my projections. Okay. If the going rate from the carrier says you can max out at 6.5, I'm doing 5.5. That's just me. I'm probably lowballing it. But I want them to have that conservative expectation in this idea of what I am and what they're getting. And I think that helps a lot because I have made the mistakes. I had my own freaking brother-in-law who is one of the smartest people I know about 3 years in. Now, this happened in 2020, and he had a business that just went right in 2020. And he was struggling and he was pulling out all the stops just to survive, sold his house, all this stuff. But he canceled his policy and he let it ride. He thought it would just ride forever because he was thinking of a policy he bought when he was about 20 years old that he paid into for 3 years. That was nothing like this, right? So he thought it was just right after paying into it for only 2 years. And he just stopped paying into it. And how he could have remembered that, I thought I had done everything perfect. So some people can be really smart. You can have really good conversations and it's still going to happen because it's usually not a priority product. But it has to be something they take to heart as important for their retirement planning. It's foundational and it's a long-term thing. If it's near-term stuff, if you're promising outcomes within the first 5-6 years, then
No, I mean that's when the fees are the highest. Yeah. No, I agree. I think there's a massive amount of misrepresentation when it comes to the product. I mean, even what's going on with Pac Life and Kyle Busch is a direct representation of that. So when you guys, what do you mainly? Because I know you mentioned for the most part you're doing quite a bit of annuities. So when it comes to sort of supplemental retirement income, you guys lean more into annuities over any sort of cash value policy. Do you guys do any sort of max fund whole life, any sort of max fund IUL, or is it primarily annuities? And I think you mentioned fixed indexed annuities.
max
So
fund.
I was asking, yeah, I was asking about so when you guys are, because it sounds like the Medicare is, correct me if I'm wrong here, the Medicare is sort of the top of the funnel where you're building the relationship and then from there, you guys are segueing over into retirement planning. And I know you also mentioned you have fiduciaries who are licensed to do securities. Now, when you guys are having conversations about retirement planning, what is your go-to? Are you guys using max funded whole life? Do you guys use any sort of max funded IUL? Or are you guys primarily, because I know you also mentioned safety being a concern, and I think like the more that I've learned, the more that I've learned about retirement planning, um, the more I see how valuable safety is, especially when having conversations with since we've moved up market now. I've been having a lot of conversations with clients, and I've been taking calls primarily to build out the sales process for the team. And you hear horror stories from people who have had money in the markets, and the older they get, the more they prioritize safety. And that was sort of one of the enticing things as to what got us in the IUL space was, 0% floor, understanding the mechanics of the IUL and the risks that it does propose. But yeah, I guess what sort of vehicles do you guys primarily prioritize, and why?
Yeah. So now our average client is older than your average, it sounds like. Most likely.
Mhm. Ours is like
So
40 to 50 is pretty much the
there you
range
go.
that we operate in.
Yeah, sounds just right. And our average, our median is about probably 67,
Mm.
maybe 68, 69 maybe. Okay. As far as our median client. And so an IUL for most of those folks, as you understand, is awfully
Impossible.
expensive inside, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Cost of insurance is through the roof.
It's surprisingly not impossible, and there
Mhm.
are niche cases where it can actually be a thing. Okay, max funded IUL, but it makes it much less likely, right? As you know, life insurance cost is on a curve, right? And
Yep.
uh, so we're going to indexed annuities, all right? And you understand indexing, okay? There's no difference. You'll see the numbers are smaller, right? Instead of a 15% cap, you'll see an 8% cap, or instead of a 12% cap, you'll see a 6% cap, right? Life insurance has a lot more money to work with for the carrier to design potential gains, because there's fees inside of it. An IUL at its base without any riders has no fees. Okay. So you put 100,000 in. If it made zero the next year, you'll have 100,000 because there's no fees to take out any money, right? So we're using index annuities largely because of the safety factor. I use them. A lot of our financial advisors can send them a bond replacement. We'll use fixed too. We can go pure fixed for clients who fixed are better now than they have been before about 3 years ago. So are indexed. I prefer indexed to fixed largely because I know that a good fixed indexed annuity is designed actuarially to come out over 10 years at about 1 to 1.5% average higher rate of return than a fixed annuity in the same environment. That may not sound sexy, but that's the reality. So I do prefer them, and I have seen them perform much better than that. So they have the potential to perform much better, right? That 1.5 is an average. But no fees unless you place a rider on there intentionally, and then you know exactly what it's doing for you. I like that clarity. Um, I have financial advisors that are fee-based advisors, but I'll admit there's not a lot of clarity about or between um, what you're paying for and what you're getting in that space, right? You're paying for an advisor to help plan, design, advise, but that's all kind of fluffy stuff. Whereas if I have an indexed annuity or other kinds of annuities, and I put a rider on there, I can point to a policy. This is exactly how it's going to work. And next year, it'll work just like this and just like this. This is what you bought, right? So like that. So for our typical market, it's an indexed annuity. Now, when it comes to a much smaller market for us, which is the idea of, and most of the underwritten life insurance that do fully underwritten life insurance is going to be a GUL, guaranteed universal life. Someone is often, we do 1035 exchanges into those. People are just looking to have a set amount of life insurance for wealth preservation, income replacement. You think, well, they're older now, they don't need income replacement. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Okay, so they have a spouse passes away, then there's a loss of Social Security, or there's a loss of a pension, or it goes down, cut in half. So there's all that. They just want that benefit, but the cash value is unneeded. So we do a lot of GULs, guaranteed universal life, so that it's still completely protecting it. It's basically, some people call it permanent term. It's kind of an oxymoron, but that's what a GUL. So that's our primary fully underwritten life. And then we'll have those circumstances where we have some folks that want to do some interesting things with life and get some of the more interesting financial benefits and ninjutsu that that a max funded life can provide. And that's going to tend to be a younger audience. And the advisor I have right on the other side of the wall from me here, he prefers whole life. Okay. Now, I personally bought an IUL a long time ago. And for a long time, I preferred IULs. Right now, I'd say I probably lean a little bit towards whole life. Okay. But both have their place. They're both preferences. And so we go back and forth on both. Our agency has a bias towards outcomes, not only because our market is biased towards retirees, but I think because we've been doing this a while. So when I was a new agent, I had certain impressions about what was a lot of money. I visit with a client and I would think 20,000 or 40,000 was a lot of money. Now I know that's poppycock in retirement. That's nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing. So what I consider reserves is very different from what I understood then. I've also seen how customers actually treat the products that they buy in mass across lots of them. It's not theory, right? Of course, I started in 2008, so I got an early lesson in people's pain. Fortunately, I was on the safety side of it. 2008 was a great year. It was so awesome. 8 and 9, people thought I was a guardian angel. Honestly, I knew enough to place the right products because that's what I was selling. I was selling the right products, indexed annuities. So you couldn't lose any money, right? And so their brother-in-law lost like half his retirement funds, but they didn't lose anything. And that was fun to be on that side of the business.
Yeah.
So we'll use both. We don't do any limited underwriting in that space. It's all fully underwritten. If it's limited underwriting, then the client's going to pay more inside. We make sure they're truly max funded, and if they're not going to be truly max funded, the client knows the cost benefits, and we know exactly what we're doing. Let's see. So as far as placement, that's the tools we use. We have a fairly limited number of carriers. I mean, we have access to a ton of carriers, but there's not a ton of carriers that are good at this.
Yeah.
Um, there's really only one, maybe two whole life carriers that we would prefer, actually. And there's one I overwhelmingly prefer. Carrier in the whole life space. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who's that?
I'll tell you off. I don't know if I want to talk
Okay.
about individual carriers on here yet, but and then IUL, I think it's a wider margin. There's more carriers competing for that space. They make more money at it. Unfortunately, I think a lot of carriers are entering or competing for that space. It's very profitable for them. Their commitments and their guarantees are low, right? The guarantees inside these things are actually rather low compared to other life insurance products. So, and people are putting more money into them compared to the guarantees. So, and the persistency rate, the fact that it's low is, I mean, is actually helpful to the carriers in one way. So they're collecting a lot of premium without having to provide the benefits, right? We already know that life insurance, part of the leverage from any life insurance policy comes because so many people actually cancel their life insurance or it terminates, like term, before a person passes away, right? So keeping a permanent life insurance policy for its duration gives you a lot of leverage, right? If you're one of those few, about 8% less, I think, I'd be off on that number, they actually maintain their permanent life insurance policy. IULs, even less so. So now the insurance company would like to keep that premium longer in going, but still, they didn't have to pay out those guarantees. So there is more leverage inside them, I would think. But the person's got to understand enough and do it. And the art is the salesperson doing right for the client by design and education, but also not trying to overeducate like I am prone to do, and losing the sale because the person is getting confused.
Business.
I saw his reaction to really the whole IUL space. He didn't want me training agents on it when they're brand new. He says, stay away from that. And I later learned to respect why brand new agents, he didn't want them trained on IULs. One, it kind of blows your mind when you first think about it. It's all you think. Once you understand what max funded IUL and you get the concepts down, it's like it takes over your head. You're like, oh wow, really? Right?
Yeah.
And so you could be, hey, no, I need to go sell some Medicare and some final expense. I need to make daily sales, but your headspace is all in and that. So, but also you've seen the persistency rates, okay? And it can kill agent careers in the beginning, especially if it's not their bread and butter product, because they're probably going to do it wrong, okay? At least if it's not their bread and butter product, and it's not for my agents, not most of them. And the persistency is also, to do it right, they got to cut their commission to a third.
Yep.
If it's designed right, it's not going to be the normal commission equation. It's a third of what they normally would see for the same amount of premium. So, which can mess up with agents' heads. Sometimes they don't quite get that. No, you know this. Sometimes you tell them one thing, and that doesn't mean they remember it, right? Yeah. So we've been very careful, even timid in that space. In the last few years, I've been very less timid, and I've been very aggressive about training agents, because right now it's blown up on social media. I want people to understand how to do it right. So
yeah.